Welcome to Weekly News Highlights. The world's largest all-electric aircraft made its maiden flight, taken to the skies over Washington State in the U.S. Northwest. From engine maker Magni X and aerospace firm Aerotech, the Cessna Caravan 208B 9-seater plane flew for approximately 30 minutes before landing safely back at Moses Lake's Grant County International Airport, 180 miles southeast of Seattle. With the plane's propeller powered by Magni X 750 horsepowered Magni 500 propulsion system, the engine maker hopes to have the all-electric Cessna Caravan entering commercial service in 2021, making it the largest zero-emissions commercial aircraft in operation. The Premier League said the season will restart on June the 17th, provided all safety requirements have been put in place. The league said after meeting with all 20 clubs, the season will get back underway with Aston Villa versus Sheffield United and Manchester City versus Arsenal, which are both games in hand. A full fixture list will then be played on the weekend of June the 19th to the 21st. All games will be played without fans in attendance. The Premier League was suspended on March the 13th due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and failure to resume the season could cost the league around £750 million in lost revenue from broadcasters, according to British media estimates. This year's British and Australian MotoGP races have been cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Organizers said the British Grand Prix was scheduled for Silverstone on August the 30th, while the Australian round had been due at Phillip Island on October 25th. The news comes as various riders use the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalonia to train ahead of the next scheduled race in Brno, Czech Republic on August the 9th. Grand Prix races in Spain, France, Italy, and Catalonia were postponed until later this year. A Chinese survey team reached the peak of Mount Everest to conduct scientific research, including remeasuring the height of the world's highest peak. According to China State Television, the team placed a surveyor's beacon on the summit and will use a global navigation satellite system receiver, a gravimeter, snow depth radar, and a meteorological measuring instrument to determine the mountain's height. It will take about 2 months to finalize the new measurement. It took about 9 hours for the team and camera crew to reach the summit from a mountain camp at an altitude of 8,300 meters. They had previously made 6 attempts to reach the peak, but could not do so due to bad weather. China has conducted previous remeasurements of Mount Everest in 1975 and 2005, which came out to 8,848 meters and 8,844.4 meters, respectively. Australia's Northern Territory held the 2020 Uluru Camel Cup competition, going digital for the first time in its 9-year history to play safe, despite having no active cases of COVID-19. Some sporting events resumed this week as life returns to normal after more than 2 months of strict social distancing restrictions to stop the spread of the virus, though the Northern Territory retained border curbs that keep out tourists. The main Uluru Camel Cup was won by Laura Biller, a 25-year-old German who has lived in the region for 3 years. The United States President, Donald Trump, decided to terminate the U.S. relationship with the World Health Organization, or the WHO, and redirect funds to other worldwide and urgent global public health needs. In a letter to WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus earlier this May, President Trump threatened to permanently cut off the nation's funding to the WHO and reconsider the U.S. membership if the international body does not commit to what he called substantive improvements within the next 30 days. President Trump announced in mid-April that his administration would halt U.S. funding to the WHO, a roundly criticized move that many experts have said was trying to shift blames and would be counterproductive to addressing the public health crisis. At the Kinania COVID-19 treatment facility, a short distance from Rwanda's capital Kigali, Akazuba, Ikziri, and Ngabo report for duty, but these are no ordinary healthcare workers. In a bid to minimize contact between patients infected with COVID-19 and doctors and nurses, the country has deployed 3 robots to carry out simple tasks such as taking temperatures and monitoring patients. The sleek white robots with big bright blue eyes and a rather human appearance were donated by the United Nations Development Program, or the UNDP, and are helping frontline workers tackle the COVID-19 crisis in the East African nation. By relaying messages to doctors and helping the team assess the effectiveness of their clinical decisions, the robots cut the number of bedside visits that doctors have to make. China's State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission, or the SASAC, said in a social media post a Chinese-made COVID-19 vaccine could be ready for markets as early as the end of this year. In trials, more than 2,000 people have received vaccines developed by the Wuhan Institute of Biological Products and the Beijing Institute of Biological Products. A vaccine could be ready for the market as early as the end of this year or early 2021. Vaccines from the Wuhan Institute of Biological Products and the Beijing Institute of Biological Products has entered Phase 2 clinical trials. Both groups are affiliated with state-owned pharmaceutical group Sinopharm, whose management is overseen by the SASAC. China has 5 COVID-19 vaccines in human trials. Neither company could be reached for comment on Saturday evening. Fires burned and protesters took to the streets in many cities across the U.S. after a former police officer was charged with the murder of an unarmed man whom video showed pinned by the neck during an arrest in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Around 500 demonstrators clashed again with the police in Minneapolis, defying an 8 p.m. curfew. Others burned cars and looted stores. Officers opened fire with tear gas, plastic bullets, and concussion grenades. In Atlanta, protesters threw rocks and broke windows at the headquarters of news network CNN and very nearly broke their way into the building. In Washington, police and Secret Service agents were out in force around the White House before dozens of demonstrators gathered across the street in Lafayette Square. American Hikaru Nakamura stunned world champion Magnus Carlsen with an Armageddon game victory last week to clinch the 3-day semifinal and advance to the final of the Lindor's Abbey Rapid Challenge. The tie-breaking day of their semifinal opened with a draw before Nakamura and Carlsen each claimed a win, and then both settled for another draw in Game 4 to sit on 2-2 and force the Armageddon round. Playing with the white pieces in the Armageddon, Carlsen needed a win, but instead blundered and Nakamura pounced to take the stunning win and move on to the final, where he'll face Russian Danil Dubov. Hundreds of Muslim worshippers attended the noon prayers last Sunday after Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque compound reopened. Visitors walked into the compound after a 2.5-month COVID-19 closure, but authorities imposed some precautions as health officials warned of an uptick in local infections. The resumption of prayers at Islam's third holiest site capped a somber period for Jerusalem's Muslims, who this year marked the holy fasting month of Ramadan and Eid al-Fitr holiday without their usual daily visits to Al-Aqsa and the adjoining Dome of the Rock. The Council of Islamic Waqf imposed some measures to reduce the risk of contamination. Worshippers must wear face masks and bring personal prayer rugs should they wish to pray inside the shrines or on the compound's outdoor grounds. SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule carrying NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley docked with the International Space Station last Sunday, marking the first U.S. space capsule to do so with the crew since 2011. Just 19 hours earlier, the launch from Florida by SpaceX, the private rocket company of billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk, marked the first time that commercially developed space vehicles, owned and operated by a private entity rather than NASA, have carried Americans into orbit. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center at 7:22 GMT for the journey to the International Space Station. Belgian Stoffel van Doorn finally converted pole position into virtual victory in Formula E's Race at Home Challenge last week to go a point clear in the eSports series with 2 races remaining. The field was reduced to 23 drivers after Audi sacked Daniel Abt for getting a professional gamer to race in his place in the previous live-streamed round a week ago. Mercedes driver Van Doorn has taken 4 poles in 6 races, but Saturday, around a virtual Brooklyn Cruise terminal in New York, was the first time the former McLaren F1 driver had gone on to win. The series features regular Formula E drivers competing on simulators from their homes and aims to provide some action for fans of the all-electric championship, with racing on hold in real life due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A boat carrying 101 migrants was intercepted before attempting a journey to Europe from the Libyan coastal city of Gharabuli. The migrants, including women and children, were taken to a security checkpoint in the city of Homs, 120 kilometers east of the capital Tripoli. The Interior Ministry of Tripoli's Government of National Accord, or the GNA, that made the interception last Sunday, said the migrants would later be transported by bus to a detention center. The United Nations Migration Agency said last week Libya's Coast Guard had stopped nearly 400 migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean in 5 boats over 2 days. The European Union's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier warned Britain there would be no post-Brexit trade agreement if it did not fulfill its commitments. Ahead of the 4th round of Brexit talks, the EU's chief negotiator says the economic fallout from COVID-19 makes a trade deal more vital. Michel Barnier also accused the UK of falling behind on its commitments. Meanwhile, Barnier said that the economic damages wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic made it even more important for the EU and Britain to reach a new deal. Tropical storm Amanda has killed at least 7 people in El Salvador as heavy rains made rivers overflow, flooded city streets, and produced landslides. The United States National Hurricane Center, or the NHC, said Amanda or its remnants are expected to produce rain totals of 10 to 15 inches over El Salvador, southern Guatemala, western Honduras, and the Mexican states of Tabasco and Veracruz. Tropical storm Amanda was packing maximum sustained winds of nearly 65 kilometers per hour, with higher gusts, and was expected to weaken very soon as its center moves farther inland. Britain's Foreign Minister, Dominic Raab, confirmed that they will not look away from its responsibilities to Hong Kong, repeating London's offer of extended visa rights in response to China's push to impose a new law in the former British colony. The former minister added that if China follows through with national security legislation, they will give those people who hold British national overseas passports the right to come to the UK. Rome's ancient Colosseum was bathed in red, green, and white colors of the Italian flag on the eve of its reopening after 3 months under lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As one of the most iconic Italian monuments, the Colosseum witnessed many historic events in human history, the last of which the COVID-19 outbreak that killed more than 33,000 people in the country. Doors opened to the public with strict social distancing regulations and attendance allowed only with pre-booking. Large and small U.S. retailers have closed some of their stores across the country because of disruptions caused by the widespread street protests over the police killing of George Floyd in the state of Minneapolis. Target, CVS, Apple, and Walmart all had temporarily closed some locations for safety reasons. Target said workers impacted by the closures will be paid for up to 14 days of scheduled hours during store closures, including COVID-19 premium pay, and will also be able to work at other nearby Target locations. In a statement, the Minneapolis-based company said its focus is on employee safety and helping the community heal. Wuhan, in central China's Hubei province, tested 9,899,828 people between May the 14th and June 1st in a citywide drive to screen the novel COVID-19 virus infections. On May the 14th, Wuhan launched a campaign to offer nucleic acid tests to those not tested before. Officials said the move was aimed at reassuring the public as the city reopens its factories, businesses, and schools. The city's health commission said the tests are voluntary and free, with all costs borne by city and district governments. Huazhong University of Science and Technology alleged no COVID-19 cases were found in the process. Meanwhile, 300 asymptomatic cases were found and quarantined, as well as 1,174 people in close contact. All in the latter group have been tested negative for infections, according to the authorities. South Korea said it would recommence proceedings against Japan at the World Trade Organization over export controls on some high-tech materials, adding that talks to resolve the dispute had so far failed to make progress. Japan imposed curbs on exports to South Korea of 3 materials used to make semiconductors and display in July last year, threatening a key pillar of the South Korean economy and the global supply chain of tech components. South Korea in September complained to the World Trade Organization over Japan's move, but in November suspended the proceedings for further talks. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the Japanese foreign minister said South Korea's decision was regrettable and that any review would be conducted in line with the actual execution of controls. Parisians who had to give up their morning ritual of coffee and croissants were delighted to go back to their favorite cafes as lockdown measures were further eased in France. French restaurants and cafes have been shut since March the 16th to contain the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. With the number of new infections from the virus declining, France's government ruled that from June the 2nd, restaurants could reopen, as well as beaches, and a ban on travel of over 100 kilometers can be lifted. In Paris, cafes and restaurants are only allowed to have customers on terraces, as health authorities place the capital and its region in an orange zone, where the virus is most active despite falling numbers of contamination and hospitalization. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said that the French economy is set to contract 11% this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic and warned of harder days ahead until things bounce back next year. France imposed one of Europe's strictest lockdowns in mid-March and only began removing restrictions from the 11th of May. With around 300,000 cafes and restaurants reopening, Le Maire said that they will continue to benefit from handouts from a government solidarity fund until the end of the year to help cover fixed costs. Austria's Red Bull Ring and Britain's Silverstone Circuit will each host 2 Grand Prix without spectators on an initial 8-race Formula One calendar. Austria's races start the season on July 5th and 12th and will be called the Austrian Grand Prix and the Grand Prix of Steiermark, the region in which the circuit at Spielberg is located. Silverstone will host the British Grand Prix on August the 2nd and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix on August the 9th. The Hungarian Grand Prix will be on July the 19th, with races in Spain, Belgium, and Italy on August 16th, 30th, and September the 6th, respectively. Unfortunately, the Formula One season was unable to start in Australia in March as planned due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam said the central government will not back down on plans for national security legislation for the financial hub, even as Britain stepped up criticism of the move. Lam, speaking at a news conference during a trip to Beijing, said she had met with Vice Premier Han Zheng, who ensured that the government is determined to carry out the legislative work on the new law. Prime Minister Boris Johnson earlier said Britain will not walk away from the people of Hong Kong if China imposes a national security law that would conflict with its international obligations under a 1984 accord. Moscow streets were seen busy as Russia partially lifted COVID-19 restrictions, allowing people to go for a walk and some non-food stores to open. Cafes and restaurants, which only work in takeaway and delivery modes, are preparing for reopening, equipping halls with social distance stickers. The opening date for public catering has not yet been announced by Moscow authorities. Russia reported 8,500 new cases of COVID-19 on June the 3rd, bringing its nationwide tally to over 430,000, the third highest in the world. The death toll reached 5,215, after authorities said they had recorded another 178 deaths from the virus in the past day. The International Council of Nurses, or the ICN, said more than 600 nurses worldwide are known to have died from COVID-19, which has infected an estimated 450,000 healthcare workers. The death toll among nurses more than doubled in the past month from 260 on May the 6th, based on data from more than 30 countries. On average, 7% of all COVID-19 cases are among healthcare workers, which means that nurses and other staff are at greater personal risk. The nurses group said infection rates among healthcare workers vary greatly between countries, with fewer than 1% in Singapore and more than 30% in Ireland. Spain and Germany have recorded low numbers of fatalities among healthcare workers despite large outbreaks. The ICN represents 130 national associations and more than 20 million registered nurses. The World Health Organization, or the WHO, is set to resume its trials of hydroxychloroquine for potential use against the new COVID-19 virus. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus made these remarks after testing was suspended due to health concerns. The UN body has paused its large study of the anti-malarial drug to treat COVID-19 due to fears it increased death rates and irregular heartbeats in patients. Ghebreyesus told an online media briefing that WHO experts had advised the continuation of all trials, including hydroxychloroquine, whose highest profile backer for its use against COVID-19 has been US President Donald Trump. Speaking alongside Ghebreyesus, WHO epidemiologist Maria Van Kerkhove warned that the virus could become more dangerous if people became complacent, but added that the virus itself was stable and was not mutating in a way that would make it more severe. That's it for tonight. Join us again next week for more weekly news highlights.